Do you think that buying a rental property that already has a tenant living in it is always a home run? Hi, I'm Veronica Woods from Daniel Woods Real Estate Company. If you want to learn how you can take a rental property portfolio and generate additional income each month, as well as create wealth that you're able to pass on to the next generation, as well as protect your retirement, you'll want to go ahead and hit the subscribe button on this channel now. In this video, I will review whether it's always a time to celebrate when you learn that the property that you're interested in already has a tenant living in it. The answer really is it depends. Now, on the pro side, when you talk to whoever's financing your property, they will count the rental property income into the equation when they're figuring out how much money you can borrow. And the second benefit is, there is a lot of peace of mind knowing that from day one, you will have income coming in that will cover some of the operating expenses for the property. But, and this is a big but, if you don't have a quality tenant in the property, you could actually lose money over the long run. And I've seen that from my clients and sellers with properties on the market today in the Philadelphia area. So in this video, I'm going to go over 3 examples where the truth of the matter is it would be better if the property were delivered vacant. And what I mean by delivered vacant, that means that the owner is responsible for either terminating the lease, evicting the tenant, and really arranging for the tenant's exit from the property before settlement. The first example of a property that you'd rather buy without the tenant is one where the tenant is paying way below market rent. I'll never forget the triplex I sold a few years ago where there was a tenant who had been in the building for about 15 years. He runs the 1-bedroom apartment. He was like the mayor in the building. He was great at pointing out all the features that I needed to know in order to get my marketing together to sell the building. However, this gentleman was paying $200 a month in rent, and he was signing an annual lease every year, which meant at the time we were selling the property, he was going to be there another few months. So in this case, $200 a month, the year was 2017. He should have been paying at least 3 times as much. So again, this is a case where it would be easier if you didn't have to deal with this low rent lease situation. The second example of when you'd much rather buy the property vacant is if you discover that the previous landlord had very lax screening criteria. When you know that they had lax screening criteria, that means that you're probably buying a more costly property to manage as well as more headaches. Couple examples of how that can appear. One, you find out that all 1 or more tenants are 3 or 4 months behind in their rent. Another example is you see that the house just has a lot of wear and tear, showing that the tenants are just too hard on the house. You can think of example, 3-bedroom house, 6 occupants living there, not including the 4 cats and the 2 dogs. And you can imagine the wear and tear just that you could see just by the people just living in the property and the extra cost that you would have to account for on a monthly basis with that family. The last thing that you could observe is just by talking to the tenants when you're doing the showing, are they complaining a lot? Are they complaining about what the landlord didn't do? Are they complaining about, being cooperative in the selling process? If they're going to do that to the previous landlord, they're probably going to do that for you. And then that means, again, you're walking into someone else's problems. You can cut through that by having the problem out of the property before you buy it. The third example that I'll cover in this video of when you prefer to actually not have the tenant living in the property and have it start off with a clean slate is if you determine that you have to do significant repairs in order to get the property up to market rents. You quickly discover that it is difficult to arrange anything beyond emergency repairs in apartment units with tenants. I speak to landlords all the time when I'm assessing kind of incomplete repair projects with tenants, and the reason that they give is that either the tenant's stuff is in the way or that the tenants made it difficult to arrange access for the contractors to come in and out and to fully complete the projects. Also, you have to consider whether the tenants will be happy at paying a higher rent even for improved apartment. A lot of tenants would prefer, let's call it basic amenities, in exchange for keeping their rent low. So you don't want to make that assumption that they will be happy to live in a nicer apartment in exchange for more rent. Again, sometimes it's better to start with a clean slate, which means a vacant unit. Now, before I wrap up the video, I do want to emphasize a few takeaways that you should glean from the three examples that I covered here. One is that the devil you know is not better than the devil you don't know. If you and your team aren't confident that you would pick that tenant to live in that property time and time again because they're qualified, you would prefer, again, to have the property vacant and start from scratch and pick your own tenant. I would say that if you know that the property has been professionally managed by a good property manager, there is a higher likelihood that you would be inheriting a good, solid tenant. Another point I kind of alluded to is the leases. You can't just terminate a lease at a drop of a dime. So when you buy a property, you must honor the leases. So if there's 6 months left in the lease, you have to keep that tenant for at least another 6 months unless they did something to violate that lease. So you have the most flexibility when you're buying or looking at a property that has a month-to-month lease. Now, if you're a little nervous about picking your first tenant and what that process would be to manage the property on your own, you'll want to check out the video that just appeared on the screen now. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to find out when the next video is published, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.